Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this council meeting of the City of Temple for Thursday, January the 17th. If you please rise. Pastor D.S. McBride with Grace Temple Ministries will lead us in an invocation, and then Mr. Norman Sisk will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Every head bowed, please. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for who you are. We thank you for being our King of Kings and our Lord of Lords and our Alpha and Omega, our beginning and the ending. We give you thanks for our city council, whom we hold up in prayer before you today. Men and women who are in position of authority, we pray that the Spirit of the Lord rest upon them in all decisions that they make for this city, and that every decision include every citizen and have every citizen in mind. Thank you that the skillful wisdom, godly wisdom has entered into their hearts, and knowledge is pleasant to them. Discretion watches over them, understanding keeps them, and delivers them from the way of the ungodly and from ungodly men. Father, we ask that you compass the mayor and the city council with men and women who make their hearts and ears attentive to godly counsel and do that which is right in your sight. We believe you cause them to be men and women of integrity, and we pray that the upright shall dwell in our city government. Your word declares that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and we declare that this city is God's city, and we receive your blessings. Father, you are a refuge and a stronghold in times of trouble, so we declare with our mouths that your people dwell safely in this land, and we prosper abundantly. And we believe that we are more than conquerors through Christ Jesus. It's written in your word that the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, and you turn it whichever way you desire. And we believe that the heart of our leaders are in your hand, and their decisions are divinely directed of you, Lord. And we give you thanks for the good news of the gospel that is published in our land. The word of the Lord prevails and grows mightily in the hearts and lives of these people. We give you thanks for this city and the leaders that you've given us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen.
Before we say the pledge, it might be evident we've just returned from Hawaii, and while there we happened to see the memorial to the Arizona, also to see the Punch Bowl Cemetery of the fallen leaders of our country. It means even more to me now as we pledge to think of all of those who've given their lives in that we might be here tonight. Let's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for the pledge and the invocation. Pastor McBride, there was an event going to take place Monday at your church. Would you tell us about that?
Absolutely.
If you would come forward, that way we put that on the record and people will see that on the television.
Monday the 21st at 3 p.m. Our church will be hosting the annual NAACP's celebration for Martin Luther King. And we would like for each one of the city council members and everyone who's present today to come and be a part of that great celebration of a man who brought our nation together, and we want to continue honoring him and the legacy that he left with us.
So that's Grace Temple Ministries.
Grace Temple Ministries,
on
Avenue H and 13th Street. Avenue H and 13th Street. You cannot miss it. Avenue H and 13th, and the celebration will begin at 3 p.m.
Great.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the invitations. The next item on our agenda is an opportunity for public comment. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to the meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and no discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. We have one individual signed up wishing to speak this evening, Mr. Willie Hall. Mr. Hall.
My name is Willie Hall, and I've been here about 6 years. So my deal is going to be short, sweet, and snappy.
Would you state your address for us, please?
100 North 7th Street. I stay at Francis Graham. I know what it is. Like I said, I've been here for about 6 years. I've come here to the VA to get medical treatment for my eyes and other stuff. I'm on dialysis right now. But the thing I had something that happened to me on the bus, the hop. I use the hop as my main transportation, and I've used it ever since it's been here. But recently I had something to happen to me that I didn't appreciate. The driver of the bus got up, and I guess he was angry at me for some reason, and said that I was nobody. And then he also said that he was going to whoop me when he got off from work at my place of residence. I called the police and everything. But what really got me the most was I called Mr. Adder. He's the manager of the HOP. And I called him and then told him the situation. But then he told me it was no of any importance to him because I was just not important. I was just one person. So anyway, I've taken all avenues. And I wouldn't have been here unless I've gone to the newspaper. I've called the police department everywhere I know that this guy continues to drive this bus. And I'm just saying, I called him and I asked for an explanation. He said, was there anybody on the bus that you know? I said, well, look, I'm just a person here. I mean, I don't know places. I know places. Anyway, I just want to say this. I'm asking if anyone would look into this problem because this shouldn't have happened. And then the way Mr. Adler approached me is like it was no of importance to him because I wasn't significant. I think anybody's significant. So anyway, I approached a lot of people and asked them to ride the HOP. But I noticed they began not to ride. It's because of this one driver. They're afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him. But I refuse to go to the violent route. So I'm coming to you asking for help. If you would just only look into it, and then I would be able to explain to other people why nothing. He continues to drive. He's happy. He also told me nothing was going to happen to him. He thinks he's beyond reproach. So anyway, this is short, sweet, and snappy. I'm just making this appeal so I can go back because no elderly person, no person with disability should be afraid to ride the bus. That just shouldn't be. I've been all over this country. It should not be. And then when people come into town, this is the first thing they see. It gives a bad representation of the city. And I tell everybody, Temple, I've been all over the country. Temple is a nice place. The people are friendly. Every church that I've attended, from First Baptist, United Methodist, to all the other churches, Walmart, any place on the street, people are ready to help you. So this was a shock to me. And I'm just asking for this, and that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Next item on our agenda is presentations and recognitions. We have Ken Sakura is here this evening with us tonight. Kevin Beavers from Parks and Leisure Services to do a couple of recognitions this evening. And you want to do the microphone number? All right. See if I can turn that. That's your on the inside. Keep up. Is that? Do we have enough volume? Turn that up, please. Is that, you got it up now? Is it? I got a green light, so I'm going to turn it on the inside. I think you use the other one. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. It's our pleasure to be here tonight and to do something really special, we think, for the department and for the city, and that's to recognize a couple of what I'll say are MVPs, most valuable players from the recently completed senior games, state championships we just held here. As you know, it's a major undertaking. It's probably one of the largest, if not the largest, events to come to the city in terms of impacting our hotels and our tourism. It's a great event. We've held it, I think, about 8 years now, and it's just really good. And one of them is an individual, and one of them is actually a corporation. And I'd like to thank... Yeah,
I think you're on now. Okay, I'd like to start by recognizing an individual who helped us on our committee, who really was one of our most valuable players. Without him, we would not have been able to pull the games off, and that's Norman Sisk. So Norman, if you want to come up. Norman took this job on. I don't think he knew what he was getting into when he did it. And I got to tell you, I knew Norman a little bit. He's been our president of our site council over at the senior center, gotten to know him. But I surely didn't know him as well as I've known him the past few months. For not only did he do the senior games, but he did go out and work with the seniors in the community in particular to help with when the Parks Bond was going. But he got to know, I think, about everybody in Temple. He's sending out news releases. Every time there was a presentation at a Parks Bond, he'd say, "I need your help for senior games." And I think he ended up with about 250 volunteers, give or take, which we cannot do the event without volunteers. There's just no way the city has enough staff people. It's a tremendous job, tremendous undertaking, and hopefully he'll consider doing it next year. But if not, we certainly do appreciate what he did last year and could not have pulled the games off without all his help. Thank you, Norman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure working with all of the people and those from out of town, and this is mighty pretty. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Norman. I would like to recognize, before I do the next award, a couple of the staff people here. Kevin Beavers was our chair of the event, was the recreation superintendent. Val Roaming helped in the back with the parks maintenance, and Anna Foster was on for some of our events, and I don't think there's anybody else from the committee here. The next one I'd like to call up is, let me see if I can get this halfway right, as somebody whose name gets butchered all the time myself, Dr. Angie Hochholter, who's with Scott and White in the Department of Internal Medicine and the Program for Aging and Care. Scott and White, I think, has been with us since we started the event. The event actually started before I came here, but Scott and White was a partner then. Corporate sponsor means a lot, and we do get a lot of sponsors for a lot of our events. But I think what's even more important is when we're able to get a corporate partner. And Scott and White has been that from the very beginning. Their marketing staff has been involved. The doctors come on board and do clinics and work with the athletes. They've just been there all along the whole 8 years. They're signed up for next year. And they've really been a leader in the community when it comes to working this event. And Angie, we'd like to thank you on Scott and White, Scott and White, and present this to you.
I'd like to say thank you to the staff that put on the event. This is a chance for the city to showcase, and along with Scott and White, to showcase the fact that there is a group of people out there who are aging very, very well, and it's a good model of healthy aging for our community. So I appreciate the opportunity to be involved in that, and thank you to the city for allowing that event to happen here.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next item is a presentation regarding the Tree for Me program. And Mr. Sikora, you're going to take that one as well.
Yes. About 3 years ago, the city applied for a grant, and we received it from the Texas Forestry Service to actually build our tree farm. And what we wanted to do when we applied for the grant was to be able to line the city streets with trees. We wanted to build a tree farm, not only for our parks and the city right-of-way, but to be able to give trees to the homeowners to put in the right-of-way that would help, as you can see in this short presentation, to make a lot of the trees in neighborhoods begin to look like the historic district in future years. And we held an event this past fall called A Tree for Me, and the program pretty well explains what occurred, but it was our opportunity to give away our first 100 trees to the community. And it was an overwhelming success. We also, the tree board that the city council appointed about a year ago, got involved with it and encouraged us to work with the schools, and we did that with the Belton schools and the Temple schools, and that you'll see that in the program here too. That also was a great success, and we're planting trees in the schools. So we put a little video together. James Stafford on my staff did this, our marketing person, and I think you'll learn a lot about the program when you see it. It's a short video.
Marketing Coordinator for Temple Parks and Leisure Services. What I'd like to do is spend the next few minutes telling you about our A Tree for Me program. In 2005, the City of Temple received a grant from the Texas Forestry Service to help us plant trees in Temple yards that didn't already have a tree or needed another. The goal of the program was to fill every Temple neighborhood with the kind of tree-lined streets you find in the historic downtown Temple area. October 27th marked the first ever giveaway of the A Tree for Me program, and over 90 Temple residents picked up trees to become a part of their homes and a part of their families. That morning, Temple volunteers and employees lined up bur oaks and live oaks by the curbside, where residents could just pull up and have them loaded into their vehicles. For residents who didn't have a way to transport or plant a tree on their own, we made that possible, with volunteers pulling trailers full of trees. There was one woman at the tree farm who caught all of our attention. She was just so energetic and excited about getting her tree that we just had to talk to her. Can you tell me what we're doing out here today?
We are planting my tree that I got from the city to beautify my yard in this neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, you've got a really nice sized live oak here. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, I went to the tree farm and looked at all the ones, and I had to decide between a few trees, and I love this live oak.
It's a pretty strong, healthy tree. I understand you've given it a name already.
Yes, his name is Samson. I'm going to call him Sammy, and water him every day and hug him and everything he needs.
Mm-hmm. It's not a light tree, so it takes a little help to get one of these in the ground, doesn't it?
Yes, very much so. And I have a neighbor that's going to be 90 in January, and he volunteered to come help me. We dug and dug and dug the park that we wanted to show good faith, and that we were going to help build we wanted a park. We wanted to help build a hole because it helps it be a part of mine. So he came over here. We spent an afternoon digging, and it was just wonderful. And his name is Bill Walling.
Obviously, it's a big, beautiful tree, but the planting time, how long would you say it took us to get this thing in the ground?
Maybe 30 minutes.
I noticed you got affectionate with the tree.
I've been affectionate with this tree since I saw it on the tree farm. Although it may not be exactly the one. I didn't know exactly which one I'm getting, but I do love live oaks. And I've got beautiful live oaks in this neighborhood already. And so it just is going to go perfectly. It's just beautiful.
Today we gave away 90-plus trees. We're going to give away a few more to elementary schools locally. What do you think of a program like this, the Tree for Me?
It is a phenomenal program.
What was your experience at the tree farm? Were you impressed by how they were running things?
Yes, very much so. Very polite. Everybody was excited. It was just like an event. It was just wonderful. I'm so happy.
This is a tree that is not just going to be something in the yard. It's going to be part of your home, a part of your family potentially.
It is. I'm glad I named it because I think it will help it to be a part of our family. I'm very happy, very grateful, very thankful.
Another aspect of the A Tree for Me program was our cooperation with Temple area schools. We created an essay contest, and fourth graders from schools around Temple sent entries on why trees are important. The winning essayist from every school earned a tree to be planted on campus in their name. Sydney was the essay winner from Lakewood Elementary, and in her essay she wrote that Mars has no trees, and that's why people can't live there. We caught up with Sydney to talk to her about her winning essay and her tree.
It's a bird and it has really big acorns. That's why I picked it. We looked at lots of them, but then we heard about the big acorns, and that's why we picked it. It's going to be really cool having them all over the place. Miss Tuma, our teacher, she asked us, some people in our class that were already done with their projects, she asked us if we wanted to write a paper, and if you wanted to, you could say yeah, and then everybody wrote one.
Today, we have been so fortunate to get to read a paper of one of my students. Her name's Sydney Siegfried. She really takes the seriousness of planting trees close to heart. She knows the importance of trees. We can't live without trees, just like she said. She said we need oxygen. If we don't have trees, we can't breathe. It's fun to have a kid's point of view. You know, when you ask kids to write something about something so important, they always write from their heart. Kids kind of just bring it home to us. You know, a lot of us, you start thinking about the big world things, but kids, it's amazing how they can just say the right answers in the shortest amount of words. They get right to the point and they make us laugh. And how fun is that?
Looks like we cut off a little early. That's kind of the overview of what we did. The program was successful. In fact, there was a lot of more people wanted trees than we had, so we're going to have our next program in April with Arbor Day in Texas. We had planned just to do it in October, but we're going to do one in October and then come back, or in April and then come back next October. So it's the program.
And Val is the director of our tree farm?
Yeah, Val's our arborist and
Roman,
oversaw this.
Yeah, good, excellent. Well, great job. Thank you.
Great presentation, too.
Norman, thank you very much for all your work. And we'll just hold that pool back next year until you do volunteer to do some again next year, and then we'll talk about the pool. No pressure, though. All right. Thank you for all your great work. Thank you, Doctor. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, item 4. Under the consent agenda, all items listed are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the Council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a Council member, and it will be considered separately. Ladies and gentlemen, we have item 4A through I tonight. Tom, are there any items that you wish to be removed from consent for individual consideration? If not, to accept the motion on item 4A through I.
Motion to approve item A through I, consent agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda item 4A through I. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna? Aye. Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 5A and B. I'll read this into the record, and we've had a request from the applicant to table this item this evening. This is the first reading, and the public hearing is still in suspension. Consider adopting an ordinance amending the Temple Comprehensive Plan to reflect commercial use on Lot 17 and a portion of Lot 16, Block 1, Bentley Bellevue Addition at 723 and 725 South General Bruce Drive and 2220 West Avenue H. And item 5B is the first reading and a continued public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a zoning change from planned development, general retail district and general retail district to commercial district on Lot 17 and portion of Lot 16, Block 1, Bentley Bellevue Addition at 723 and 725 South General Bruce Drive and 2220 West Avenue H. And again, the applicant has requested for us to table this item. Mr. Mabry, is there anything else we need to know before taking action on it?
Just that they've done that in writing, so that's part of at least Claudette's records, his faxed request.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
There may be somebody who showed up for a public hearing tonight, and you may wish to just open it and suspend it again.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Well, that being, if that's a possibility, then I'll just declare this public hearing open once again. And if there's anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Okay. Seeing no one wishing to speak, we'll put that public hearing into suspension again until this item comes before us. And is there a motion to table item 5A and B?
Motion to table items 5A and B.
Second.
Motion to table 5A and B and a second. If there's no discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna? Aye. Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 6 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to allow a proposed crematorium located at 11 North 6th Street. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give you some background on this property and on the structure there. The proposal is for a propane or natural gas powered crematorium to be added to the existing building shown on the screen. There's also electrical powered crematoriums, but this one, the applicant says, would either be propane or natural gas. A crematorium in the City of Temple requires a conditional use permit in all districts. except for the mixed-use district, and it's prohibited in that district. But every other district in Temple, it requires a conditional use permit. Currently, the building is used as an embalming facility, and so they would be adding the crematorium apparatus to the building if you approve this request. I'd like to remind you of the purpose of a conditional use permit. These statements are found in the zoning ordinance. One purpose is to allow uses that are generally might have potential nuisance characteristics or that are of a public or semi-public use that might be essential or desirable for the convenience or welfare of the public. Another purpose of a conditional use permit is to, because of the possible adverse impacts that might result from the use, that the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council review an associated site plan, and a site plan has been submitted along with the request. The Planning and Zoning Commission may recommend and the City Council may impose additional conditions necessary to protect the public interest and welfare, and those conditions may supplement or improve upon existing standards in our zoning requirements, or they may be completely new or different from things found in the zoning ordinance. This is an aerial of the subject area. The subject property is shown in red dashed lines. The property next door, I understand, is now recently caught fire, very recently. But before that, it had been a restaurant and a catering establishment, but had been vacant for a while until it recently caught fire. Across the street is a large public parking lot with a view of the Old Han Hotel. On the corner of Adams and 6th, there is a it's partly a church, and there's also, I believe, some retail activity going on in it as well. If you look at there are posters on the sides of the wall and the front that advertise various products. And then to the rear of the property is a used car business. To the north of the property, I don't have a good ground view of it, but it's kind of used, I guess, from what I understand, as a warehouse for automobile parts that are stored inside the building. This is a zoning map of the area. The subject property is shown in yellow. I circled the CA. It's a little hard to see. The zoning is central area throughout the boundaries here, and GR over 2 streets over, facing 10th Street. This shows the infrastructure in the ground for the area. There's a 6-inch water line along 6th, and there's a 6-inch sewer line in the alley behind the property. Along with the site plan, the applicant submitted information about the crematory process, and this is one of the things submitted. It's a table showing the pollution associated with various uses, such as a residential fireplace, a diesel truck, a restaurant, and a cremator. And as far as particulate matter or smoke, the crematory is the green bar in the graph, and it's the lowest of the 4 uses. Nitrogen oxide is in the middle column, and a bus is the highest producer, or a diesel vehicle, diesel truck, is the highest producer of that type of pollutant. And then VOC stands for volatile organic compounds, and a restaurant is the highest producer of those materials. And other substances that produce VOCs include things like paint strippers, cleaning supplies, pesticides, correction fluids, and permanent markers, as well as what you see in the table. And again, the crematory is low, the lowest of the 4 on this graph as well. And the intent of this submittal from the applicant would be to show that the cremator is a lower polluter than probably some of us might have thought. The zoning ordinance sets out criteria for the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider and for the City Council to consider when reviewing a conditional use permit application. One of the criteria is that the conditional use permit will be compatible with and not injurious to the use and enjoyment of the property, nor significantly diminish or impair property values within the immediate vicinity. In order to protect and promote the integrity of the downtown area and bring the subject property more into harmony with some of the surrounding brick structures, including the nearby Han Hotel, which, as you know, is in the preliminary stages of a potential renovation. Staff recommends that stucco or any masonry material allowed in the International Building Code that's installed unit by unit, including brick or ephes, or again stucco, or a combination of those materials, should be required on the front facades of the main building. The whole of the front of the building, excluding the two doors, and in order to get a wraparound effect, 25% of the two sides of the building, which you can see in the image. Another review criterion is that sufficient landscaping and screening to assure harmony and compatibility with adjacent property is provided. For this reason, staff recommends that landscape foundation plantings 4 feet in depth with shrubs be provided along the front facade of the main building, except for, of course, where the garage door is and where the walk-in door is. There's the site plan that was submitted with the conditional use permit application. Off-street parking is not required in the central area zoning district, but in order to address one of the write-in concerns that we had at the P&Z meeting from a surrounding property owner, staff suggests the addition of 4 standard-sized parking spaces at the front of the building, which is 9 feet by 18 feet. And this site plan shows those spaces, and it shows the plantings that were recommended, and then the text just recaps the building material recommendation at the bottom. 10 notices were sent out to surrounding property owners, and as of just very recently, I didn't get a chance to update this, but there were 4 disapprovals submitted and 3 approvals. The latest one came in just very recently today, and that was for this property. So there would be a D here on this property, and then the rest have been already recorded and submitted. The newspaper also printed notice of the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing on December 29th in accordance with state law and local ordinance. So now I'm going to recap the staff recommendation, and then I'll give the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation because it was different. And I would also say that this staff recommendation that I'm presenting to you now has been broadened from the original staff recommendation that was presented to the P&Z. The original staff recommendation to P&Z only included brick as a acceptable material to the front, and this recommendation has been broadened to include other materials, as I had mentioned earlier. But staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for a crematorium subject to the following modifications to the submitted site plan. Stucco or any masonry material allowed by the International Building Code that is installed unit by unit, including but not limited to brick, ephes, or a combination of these materials, shall be required on the following facades of the main building: 100% of the front facade, and then the first 25% of the length of the north and south walls of the building if you start from the front and go backwards. The second recommendation from staff was that landscape foundation plantings 4 feet in depth with shrubs should be provided along the front facade of the main building, except for in front of the entryway and the garage door. And the third staff recommendation was for 4 off-street parking spaces to be striped and provided along the front of the main building. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation accepts recommendations 2 and 3 from the staff, but they did not approve the first recommendation of staff, and that was, of course, when we had only had brick as a required material. So they did not, at a 8-to-1 vote, voted for the recommendation you see on the screen, numbers 2 and 3, as their recommendation for the stipulations for the site plan for this conditional use permit application. And at this point, I can answer any questions that the council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Council, other questions?
Is the owner okay with putting the brick in the facade on the building? That's going to be pretty interesting process if the building it wasn't made with a brick ledge to hold.
Yeah, come forward, please, sir.
I'm president or co-owner of Central Texas Mortuary. Excuse me. Before the state changed the law to allow mortuary services to operate a crematorium, we were in the planning stages of upgrading the outside anyway. We did put it on hold till we went through this process, but we're all for changing the appearance of the front and whatever the city would recommend, but we're all for it.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
No, I was just saying. I mean, if it's not constructed with a brick ledge to hold a brick ledge, currently that would be tough to put a brick ledge to support brick. Is that why you went maybe to EFIS or?
Correct.
Stucco?
You want to come forward and just answer that if you don't mind.
My name's Michael Gaskins, and I'm a vice president, also co-owner. The building was not made with the edge that you're speaking of, Mr. Snyder. It's just a building, a metal building as you see it. There's not any extra ledge for the brick to be laid upon. So that's why we've asked for the recommendations of other materials to be used rather than just brick.
Okay.
Are there any plans to expand the building or add on to it at all?
Not at this moment.
But down the road, are you planning to do any other expansions or anything?
In the front?
Here, if you could come to the microphone for us, please, sir. Thanks. We can hear you fine, but they're televised.
Well, I had some dental surgery this morning, so if I talk kind of funny, that's... As far as expansion to the current building, not at this moment.
Okay, so the requirement for the parking spaces up front and those.
We're going to do all that, yes, sir.
But I just want to make sure that you understand that may limit your ability to add on at the front and other things like that.
Yes, sir. We're aware of that. Okay. But we do have some room out there.
I understand.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Other questions from staff? There being no further questions, this item requires a public hearing, and I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Can we clarify real quick
Of course.
Excuse me. It's what are the materials that the stucco? Okay, as well as EFIS or any combination thereof. Okay. All right. Answer my own question.
Okay. And it's understood. I mean that's from ground level through the roof line and on the front, and then on the side as well, going back 25% of the length of the building. Okay.
And the time frame that these improvements have to be made, what are they?
There aren't necessarily a time frame as far as the city is concerned. They probably have their own business time frame, but they would if you approved it, let's just say if you approved it with the staff recommendation as shown, then they would then apply for a building permit, and their building permit would reflect that these changes have been made to their site plan.
Are they currently working in this building, doing something in the building? And you're just going to add adding a piece of equipment to do something else, and we're requiring them to change the front of the building?
So that's my question. Is the CUP conditional upon having the change to the facade.
Yeah, yes,
Is that what we're basically
if you
stating?
vote if you vote with staff recommendation number 1 included in your vote, then yes.
It is if you make.
Okay. Sir?
Members of the council, Mayor, I'd like to just ask at this time, we're going to upgrade the appearance of the front, but I would like to ask for perhaps, a 6-month time frame from date of approval to completing the work.
Well, that's why, is there any timeline specified in this cup?
I think we just need to take his word for he's going to
Sure.
upgrade the building, and he's currently using the building. It's perfectly acceptable, but if he wants to add a piece of equipment, we want to make him change it. But
I understand. I just want to know, are we buying, is there some type of timeline that we're figuring in these, or is it open-ended? It could be a year from now?
A conditional use permit runs with the land, so it wouldn't expire, just like a zoning district doesn't expire if you grant it and someone doesn't do anything.
So theoretically, whoever, whether it's this case or not, somebody gets a conditional use permit and they may be 3 years before they fall through on on what's required in the cup?
Right, but they couldn't have the crematorium there.
Oh, they couldn't have that piece.
Without doing what you end up voting
But
on.
we could, if we wanted, we could say, hey, you know what, you can add that piece of equipment now and give you up to 6-8 months or whatever we chose to do. We have the ability to be flexible in that respect as well.
You can make that your motion and have vote on it.
So I would assume there's some research in terms of materials and those types of things.
There
that
is.
need to
There
be
are
done.
some concerns. I have some concerns about the stucco and
versus
it's
EFIS.
going to be hard to put it on
Yeah.
a metal building if it hadn't been planned to put it on it.
Well, EFIS
Previously.
is a much easier material to do that type of thing with, but it's just a matter, you want to be able to do your research and figure it out.
Right. I want to do something that's going to last, that we're not going to have to repair, or that's going to look nice.
So would you like 6 months? Is that what you asked for?
That would be fair enough.
But do you want to start the operation before then, or is this some?
Well, a couple things. I think the time to actually build the retort is
12 to 16 weeks.
12 to 16 weeks. Also, we've got to be inspected by the EPA before we can operate, and that's by the funeral commission. And one thing, we do not work for the general public. We strictly work for funeral homes. So,
Have you done any research with an architecture or a builder to say that you can put this
I
or
don't
that
know,
or
but
the other?
I'd like to talk to him because he did a pretty good job.
Well, the problem, if it's not intended to put a facade on the outside of a building, and we say you have to, you can't. If it's not constructed with the right brick ledges and that kind of stuff, you may not be able to. And so if we say you have to, and it's within 6 months, and he starts his business, and what if it's structurally you can't do that? And it doesn't make sense. That's why I hate to tie that to that, because you may not physically can do that.
So what happens if you issue
construction point of view?
If you issue a cup and we give him a year to get all his permits and equipment in, and or inspections and all that, and then in the course of that year he's doing his due diligence, and it becomes apparent that because there's no brick ledge, because this and this, EFIS won't adhere, stucco won't, whatever it is, what happens? Does he have to come for a variance, or is it done? Or?
I would think that one way you could solve that would be for them to come back and request an amendment to the ordinance that grants the CUP to change the building material part of that, and you would then hear the facts and vote on that then.
Okay. Well, I think would you tell us your name, please, sir?
Jay Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. Thank you. Mr. Anderson said they want to do something in front of the building, and so if it's a matter of if they can or can't, right now you're operating out of the building already. You already have your business in there. You just wanted to put it in a function that requires a CUP.
Yes, sir.
And whether the facade is on there or not, I'm kind of along with P&Z on this one.
That's kind of where I'm at, because I mean, you're going to have to undo what you just did if it doesn't work.
Yeah,
And he's said he's going to, put some kind of facade on the outside. I think
So you have a problem with the conditional use permit if you were given a year to do all your stuff, and at the period of that time you had to come back and say something's not going to work, all I can do is paint it. Then, I mean, is that equitable?
I don't foresee that problem. Of course, I'm not I can't even put Legos together, so I don't know, the construction. We had somebody come in that gave us, a price on redoing the front, but it was with wood to give it more of an old rustic appearance.
I just mentioned that kind of what I do is I'm a builder, and if it doesn't work, you may get in trouble down the line, and then we have to undo what we've done, and either allowed or not allowed. He's invested all this money in equipment that doesn't work. That's the only reason I bring it up.
Was there a particular reason that you were, operational and you were just taking advantage of this opportunity to try and get a building with a brick facade on it?
Well, considering, I guess,
was there a driver based on his business use?
No, it would be more based on the potential to redo the Han, which is fairly close by. The building next door before it burned is brick still. So that was the main driver behind that choice.
But the building on the other side of it, that they're
it's not.
doing the
Right.
warehousing and storage in is not.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
So, council, we have a motion and a second.
We have
Did
a
we?
motion.
We didn't do that yet? Okay, we just closed the public hearing. So, okay, so I think make any motion that you want on this.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit with number 2 and 3 attached, not necessarily number 1, and just be on the record that he wants to do something to beautify the front of his building, and I figure we trust his word at that and approve the conditional use permit and with the landscaping and the off-street parking requirement.
I'd like to ask a question though. So, that being your motion, if it were second and pass, so are we basically setting a precedent in the sense of that we are what's the plan for trying to get some of these other buildings in different parts of town, whether it be downtown or other things, when these situations come up, to try to deal with the look of certain buildings? I mean, is it so any existing buildings we leave as is, and in that respect, or what do we do?
I mean, it's just, if you have a gas station, you want to add a tire removing machine, does that mean that you have to remodel your building? I mean, that's kind of where I see it.
So you're relating
may
it to
require-
use. I mean, you're saying it's just tied to use versus do we deal with, especially if the owner or the applicant is amenable to doing something. I mean, do you take opportunities to do this or not? I'm asking what the thought is, because I think it's a precedent being set one way or another in my mind.
I would think,
I mean, if it's a total different building that burnt down or torn down, and you want to now do something with that with a conditional use or
That would be new
land development or
construction.
something like that, I mean, I can understand, but when you're doing business in it, have a hard time when you want to add a piece of equipment to change the look of the building.
But he's coming to us
So you
willing to upgrade and make it look good, so I think we should go with that.
Go with Russell's motion.
No, I think we should,
set a time frame on it?
no, but put in there that all that's in number 1 on the staff recommendation.
What if it doesn't work? And it's,
Well, if we can clone an edible cow, I think we can put something on the front of that building that would look good.
I'm not sure we've done that.
I'm not going there.
Okay, so
The motion still stands.
Well, I understand. I want to make sure. So, Russell, your motion is basically removed the issue of any materials, let them do whatever they want.
No, I mean, he's on record that he will use one of these materials.
Well, no, but he's not bound.
Well, I understand.
So but he's also talking about. Do you want? He mentioned doing the wood siding or whatever. I just want to make sure that there's no binding whatsoever to materials or anything else, and even if he does anything, there's no.
Sure.
I mean, whether they do or not do, everything just can grant the conditional use permit. Patsy, you're saying you would rather do the other thing. Okay.
Right, I would like to follow this. Well, we have a motion we need to deal with.
Not have a
My
second.
recommendation would be to follow the
Can he make
staff recommendations.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Perhaps like what Mr. Schneider's saying, and none of these materials will work, would y'all allow us to do some research with architecture firms to find out what would work and bring it, in front of y'all and say, and for y'all to prove it to see if that's what y'all would like or dislike about it? I mean, rather it just being, stucco or ephes or brick, would we be able to do some research to see it, with any other materials or?
I don't even,
Is it?
depending on what they. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't
I
say
see.
that.
I'm not gonna let you.
Okay.
So,
All right. I'm.
Yeah, just let us work through this and.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion. Is there a second for the motion? And I'll say that motion dies for
Wait,
lack of a second. Okay.
So everything but the time thing.
I mean, I'm just saying we'll take the gentleman's word that he's going to research and do that. And if it feasibly fits and he wants to remodel his building, we'll let him do it. And not make him under a thumb say you have to, or we won't give you this conditional use permit. That's all I'm saying.
David, Jonathan, either one, or I understand we're not creating a precedent that's binding per se, but when we take an applicant at their word versus including something in the permit, does that cause you any concern down the road when we are confronted with a similar situation? Do you see this as a precedent that staff's making a recommendation? What do you think?
Well, I don't believe that when the council takes actions like this, for the most part, that you're setting a precedent. I mean, I think every case has to stand its own merit. The whole idea of a conditional use permit is that something is site-specific, it's activity-specific, and you look at the totality of the circumstances. You may go 2 blocks from here and decide that it's not appropriate at that location, or that it needs screening, or they are by definition the most site-specific thing you can do with attaching conditions that are reasonable to that. So I wouldn't worry too much about setting a precedent. I agree. I think the motion is essentially to do 2 and 3, and there's just a statement for the record that Councilmember Schneider has made that he thinks the applicant has made a statement that is intent to do that. If he doesn't do that, we're not going to be able to go back to him and say, well, you intended to do it. So the motion is to do 2 and 3.
And
the option is to have him do it, but then just suggest that if for some reason structurally the building cannot be done, that they come back and ask for variance to that, or that condition be taken off. So,
Mayor, if you could put the staff recommendation back up there real quick. Regarding the second one, I'm just offering it, and I would ask this of City Attorney or Mr. Mabry, but is there a third option there where the approval of the conditional use permit and the building materials recommendation there is conditioned upon the structural viability and feasibility of those materials being, again, I'm not saying it correctly, but viable and feasible, so that if it is determined that it is not by an engineering firm or contractor or whoever, that they don't necessarily have to return to limit it. That may be too convoluted to get there.
To me, that's delegating the discretion to I'm not sure. I mean, if you want to reference it maybe to the city engineer, and I doubt the city engineer would care to weigh in on that. I don't think you can delegate your discretion to somebody else to determine if it's viable.
Tell you what I'm worried about. We are setting a precedence that if someone, I mean,
I see.
does the appearance of the building tell them where they can do something inside or not? It's just an opportunity for us to say, we're going to make you put brick because we want you to beautify the deal if you're going to come up with this permit. If it was any other reason, I mean, that didn't, if he's adding another piece of equipment for whatever reason didn't have to come here, I mean, we wouldn't be able to tell him that.
I see exactly where, I mean, I'm torn.
I mean, it'd be great. I'd like to see it beautified, don't get me wrong, but
To
I
me,
think
I'm
we're
torn.
overstepping our bounds to say, you need to remodel your building by putting something inside.
Well, and to me, the struggle is I see both sides of the coin in that I you know, you don't want a situation 10 years from now, nothing to happen with that building, and all of a sudden you've invested a ton of money in the haunt, and when you look out the window. But yet, the concern for me as well is a block over or anywhere else in downtown, that there is a major building that people are, that for whatever reason we feel like needs to be, it's a similar situation. It's an opportunity to really clean up a more prominent building, but yet we make a different requirement. My concern is I know we can, but it concerns me that we're setting that precedent. Well, it doesn't, you know, it's not within the purview to do that. So
I mean, yeah, I understand. I see, you know, they're not getting a permit to remodel. They're getting a permit to add a piece of equipment and do different business in it. Now, this got a little bit of, I just don't think that's right.
Okay, I would just like to jump in here and ask if we approve the motion that's in front of us, they can go ahead and start the installation of this new piece of equipment and diligently pursue a way to make the building look better. And I believe that they would do that.
Mr. Mayor, also, can I throw one more thing out? A potential change to the first recommendation, instead of saying what you do want, you could say what you don't want, and could say something like, for number one, that the building shall be of not exposed metal. Maybe you could word it better, but to say it can't be metal, work something out that whatever ends up working on the facade, so that it ends up not being a metal building for the sides in the front, or the 25% of the side and for the front. Just another suggestion or thing to think about, I guess.
I mean, is there something that you have in mind, or you can think of that is not one of those three
Well,
that's
no,
gonna work?
I guess it leaves it open more to the applicant to have a pretty wide choice of almost anything, as long as the front isn't metal.
I'm probably more prone to go with Russell than that. No offense, just because you could end up with a material that needs to be maintained that is not maintained. Paint coating, whether it be woods and things that need to be maintained. So,
I second the motion.
Can I throw out something, and I'm going back to what David had suggested, and that I think his thing was about whether it's structurally viable, and my question was, well, who determines that? But maybe something, if commercially feasible, that looks at cost. Because I'm just thinking, we have done some contracts, and I'm thinking a lot of our economic development contracts require that things be done if they're commercially feasible, and if it turns out, for example, hiring local contractors or doing certain things, and it essentially relieves them of that responsibility if it just isn't commercially feasible. And I realize that's a little bit vague standard, but I think it probably addresses what Russell is saying, is if they get in there and they hire an architect and he says, yeah, you can do that, but it's going to cost more than the shell of the whole building cost, then I don't think we would have an argument with him that it wasn't commercially feasible. But if he comes in there and says, yeah, it can be done, but you spray it on, it's going to cost you. And I don't want to throw out a number because I'm not in that business, but
or they want it here.
It may not be an issue, but it could be, and I hate to mess it up.
So,
And
I mean, if
have a
you-
problem with forcing them to do that to begin with, or we're not going to give you this continuum.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find some middle ground here.
Because they want to put another piece of equipment in it. I mean,
And would that accommodate what you're trying to do with what he's saying, or no?
I just have a hard time making them change the front appearance of their building for this type of permit. If it was a remodel job or any of that kind of stuff, or a new implant, I understand that down there. But just because we're putting something else in there, and they're currently doing business in the same realm, I guess, and just adding another facet of their business, add another wood press or adding another whatever processing, and I hate to, I'm sure there's machine shops that require some type of emissions permits or something like that could fit in the same building, so they want to add a piece of equipment, and we're going to make a little change to front of the front of the building or something like that. It's kind of hard for me to approve.
Mayor Pro Tem, you want to keep your second?
To just approve the motion to approve 2 and 3 on the first reading? Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. Further question? There being none, we have a motion and a second for the first reading. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to allow proposed crematorium located at 11 North 6th Street. And I'll presume this requires a second reading, and by that time maybe we can get an answer as to the feasibility. But nonetheless, if there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary?
That's with
items 2 and 3, as the recommendation came from Planning and Zoning. Okay. Okay with that, Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 7 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance amending Chapter 33 subdivisions, Chapter 93 streets of the Code of Ordinances to provide that permanent monuments shall be placed in accordance with survey and monumentation standards. Mr. Newman, you got this one?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, this section of the subdivision ordinance speaks to land survey monumentation. And do we have the display of the proposed lands? Do we? Okay, I was thinking it was a different display. But anyway, well, basically, the language that's in the current ordinance is archaic and needs to be changed. And the Development Standards and Advisory Board has looked at alternate language that complies with the governing board over land surveyors, and so we are recommending, and as well as the DSAB and the Planning and Zoning Commission, using that language as an external document and replacing with language that just speaks to that external document. And let me point to the packet information. It's this page here, this survey monumentation standards. This, rather than putting this large text into the ordinance, taking out language and putting more language in, we're recommending just to refer to it as an external document. And that way, anytime the state board governing land surveys may change the language, we can do that through the Development Standards Advisory Board and not have to come back to council and keep changing subdivision ordinance language. So that's basically the logic behind this recommendation. So it is staff's recommendation to approve the language that's attached.
So is that something we do on a regular basis, to refer to external documents? So we do with the International Building Code, so things like that? Is that kind of the same thing?
Same kind of logic.
So what you're asking for is a very identifiable document, and it can be referenced in the future through different revisions and that kind of thing?
That's correct, and we'd have to go through the Development Standards Advisory Board and then Planning and Zoning Commission. No, actually, with this road, it's only going to go through the Development Standards Advisory Board, but it's still a governing board that y'all have appointed members to and active.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Newman. Council, question? This item requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the first reading of the requested change to the Code of Ordinances. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 8, resolutions, public hearing to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2006-2007 CDBG Annual Action Plan to fund $100,000 for the Ferguson Park Splash Pad Expansion Project. Ms. Bernard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. During the end of fiscal year 2007, the CDBG Annual Action Plan originally included $100,000 for a multi-use arena to be constructed in Wilson Park. In September, it was presented to Council bids to construct that multi-use arena, and Council rejected all bids, and it was determined that the project could not be constructed within the available budget, nor was Wilson Park contained stable enough ground to construct a multi-use arena. Subsequent to that, staff is proposing that the $100,000 that was allocated to Wilson Art be reallocated to the Ferguson Park.
Wilson Park.
Excuse me?
Wilson Park. You said Wilson Art.
Excuse me. Wilson Park multi-use arena be reallocated to the Ferguson Park Splash Pad Expansion Project. The project will expand the current structure by 1,250 square feet, renovate the existing Ferguson Park Splash Pad. Renovations will also include additional spray features, original splash pad, a filter pump, wall enclosure, lighting detection system, additional benches, shade structures, and landscaping. On December 14th and December 17th, in concurrence with requirements by CDBG, public hearings were held on the annual action plan and no comments were received. If this item is approved by council, or the amendment, it will be submitted to HUD for HUD's approval, and the environmental clearance process will begin. And it is anticipated that the funding will be available in February. I think Mr. Sikora is here if you have any detailed questions about the project. And be happy to answer any financial questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Council, questions? There being none, this resolution requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. And council, your pleasure for action on this item.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the amendment, or the resolution authorizing an amendment to the CDBG plan. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Blumer?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our council meeting this evening. Thank you for your attendance and your attention, and we are adjourned.